I spent years bailing out my brother, giving him money and support. Until one night he showed me how little I really meant to him. I'm James, and I'm 28 years old. I'm the type of man who has heard it all the time. Family comes first. Perhaps it was the way our mother brought us up after our father departed. Or perhaps it was simply something I held on to because it provided some warmth to my existence. For whatever reason, ever since I can remember, anytime my younger brother Sean has ripped anything apart, I've been the one picking up the bits. He's too young to give a damn, yet he's old enough to know better at age 26. Sean has always had a lot to offer. When things go well, he's the golden boy. When they don't, he's the ghost. And I suppose I was the fool who believed that he would ultimately grow out of it if I simply provided enough love, support, and affection. As is typically the case, it began modestly. "Hey dude, I don't have enough money for rent." He only sent this one SMS, and made a desperate call since his account was frozen and he had forgotten about his credit card charge. It was only temporary, I reminded myself. As the months stretched into a year, the sums increased, but I reminded myself, everyone struggles a little in their 20s. $1,200 to fix his automobile, $200 here, $600 there. Sean always had the same grateful wide-eyed expression, swearing that this would be the last time. I really wanted to believe him. He made another call around 3 days prior to New Year's Eve. This time I was in line at the grocery store, carrying a bunch of items for a small private gathering I had organized with some friends. His speech was hurried and out of breath. He had already had his automobile repossessed due to non-payment, and he was on the verge of losing it again if he didn't pay $2,500 right away. He cried and begged, saying that if he lost the automobile, he would be left jobless. That he was at last taking his life seriously. I sent him the money against all my remaining common sense. I kept it a secret from everyone. A part of me felt ashamed of how readily I gave in. The problem is that you can ignore someone for a long time when they reveal themselves to you. However, even the thickest rose-colored glasses eventually break. On New Year's Eve, Sean announced that he was going to a party in a nearby town. I thought he would be occupied with his normal activities, such as getting wasted and making promises he wouldn't remember the next day. Along with a few close pals, I stayed at home. We played board games, counted down the clock like children, and consumed much too much junk food. It was pleasant and serene, unlike anything I had experienced in a long time. I even began giving myself permission to think that perhaps this year will be different. Perhaps in 2025 I would no longer feel as though I was always dragging my brother along with me. Then my phone broke just as everything was falling into place. Sean had sent the text. "All you are is a burden. Avoid it." That was it. No apology, no explanation, nothing. 7 words that were more powerful than any blow ever could be. I initially assumed that must have been an error. He might have been intoxicated. He might have intended to text someone else. I blinked and gazed at the screen for a long minute, reading it again as if I looked closely enough the words might change. However, they didn't. The group conversation then became active. Pictures of Sean lifting a glass with some of his party friends while beaming broadly. One of them wrote, "Freedom from leeches. Knew you knew me," as the caption for the picture. Sean was prominently shown, appearing to be completely carefree. It was as if the thousands of dollars I had struggled to make ends meet meant nothing at all. As if I meant nothing at all. I remained silent. I didn't answer. I didn't yell at him, call him, or send him a lengthy text message in rage. I simply sat there and allowed the icy emptiness to take me. I pretended to smile and said I was simply exhausted, but my buddies must have seen the change. But where that gentle hope had been, something hard and sharp began to grow inside. That night, I hardly slept at all. I kept thinking about all the times I had saved him. Every time I stood in his way of facing the punishment he deserved, he would smile, give me a slap on the back, and immediately resume his destructive behavior. That's when I realized I hadn't been doing anything for him for years. I had been giving in to him. He didn't see me as his brother. I was an idiot, a crutch, and a pocketbook. When daylight finally arrived, I knew precisely what I had to do. I started by opening my laptop and retrieving Sean's auto loan payment history. Finding the document with my name on it didn't take long. Naturally, he asked me to co-sign when he was in a dire situation, and the dealership didn't believe his credit score. Technically, I was still the car's primary owner. When Sean received the keys, he didn't even read the fine print. All he wanted to do was show his friends his new, sparkling toy. Next, I retrieved the bank statements, which displayed the number of payments that had been temporarily deducted from my account while Sean was getting back on his feet. Rather quickly, temporary life had become permanent. And I'd let it happen like a fool. The best thing is that a tow order was already in place in case Sean missed any more payments because he had already missed so many. He was also 2 days past due. Once more, it would only require one phone call. Around 8:30 a.m., I arrived. Before he could even pull himself from the residence of the stranger he had fainted in. The towing business claimed they would be pleased to expedite the pickup after instantly recalling the case. All I had to do was verify that I was the legal owner. I grinned. Yes, I am unquestionably the owner. I was enjoying a cup of coffee and watching the tow truck pull back into Sean's driveway when I parked my car across the street from his house at 9:45 a.m. Sean's automobile was still there, crookedly parked as if he'd stumbled out of it last night without thinking twice. It was a gaudy little red Mustang that even on his best days he couldn't afford. Within 5 minutes, the Mustang was off the ground, swaying slightly as the tow truck driver fastened everything into place. The driver had jumped out and connected it up with professional speed. I noticed Sean's front door creaking open as he drove away. He had a wild mess of hair, was barefoot, and had no shirt on. He was obviously attempting to take in what he was seeing, as he blinked against the morning sun. He stood there frozen for a moment. Then, shouting something I couldn't hear from my car and swinging his arms, he ran toward the street. Not even slowing down did the tow truck. I barely heard Sean's voice shouting down the street as I rolled down my window. Hello? Confused and in a panic. After that, my phone broke. A call is coming in. Sean. I saw it ring. Give it another ring. And once more. His first text message of the morning appeared on my screen when it eventually went to voicemail. Where's my C, dude? Leaning back and allowing the sun's warmth to penetrate the cold morning air, I placed the phone face down on the passenger seat. I didn't feel like the one bearing dead weight for the first time in a very long time. But I wasn't done yet. Not at all, as the actual storm was still approaching and Sean's car was only the first step. I just let the sensation take hold for a few more minutes as I sat there. It wasn't precisely happy. It was more serene than that, akin to being on the edge of a field after everything had been destroyed by a fire. Free, empty, and charred. A new beginning. My hands stopped shaking. I didn't have a racing heart. I wasn't rushing to mend Sean's newest catastrophe for the first time in years. He left a mess for me to clear, and I wasn't running to pick up bits. At last, I was allowing everything to crash as it should have. The actual consequences started as soon as I arrived home. Sean destroyed my phone. 6 missed calls, 12 and 19. Texts began to pour in, first in a confused panic, then in wrath, and then, as they turned the bend, in full-on rage. What did you do? Respond to me. This isn't amusing. I'm going to call the police. I laughed at that one. He might give it a shot. The documents and the title were in my name. Legally speaking, Sean had been using my car for months without making any payments. I was doing precisely what I was legally allowed to do, if anything. Sean, however, was not the kind to let the truth hold him back. He was beating on the door of my apartment by midday. I didn't respond. The muffled thuds of his fist hitting the wood, the occasional shout of, "Open up," and the words, "You're ruining my life," drifted through as I ate a sandwich at my kitchen table. I had an exact mental image of him. Hairy, bloodshot eyes, pacing like a stymied animal, blaming everyone but himself. He changed his strategy after seeing that I wasn't going to the door. He placed a message beneath the door. It took me an hour to even pick it up. I did, but there was only one phrase, written furiously in black marker, "You'll be sorry." That's Sean, always threatening to do something when he couldn't win a fight. I reclined in my chair and gazed at the ceiling, reflecting on all the events that had preceded this. Bending for years. Years of repressing disappointment and rage. I kept convincing myself that if I waited a little longer, he would change. As I ate ramen noodles for dinner, I reflected on the times I had paid his rent to keep him from being evicted. He had squandered his money at a casino, so I sold my game console, my only true outlet, to pay his utility bill. The birthday presents that were supposed to arrive but never did. When he said he would reimburse me the following week, it invariably turned into the following month. The following month always turned into a never. Worst of all, I recalled his smile when he was feeling good. Before he decided I was a burden, A parasite and disposable. I was all charm, bright teeth and backslaps. I was no longer expendable. His number was not blocked by me. I didn't have to. It was so much sweeter to ignore him. It was a silent form of retaliation that tasted better than anything dirty or noisy, so I let him scream into space while I went about my day. The following day, I gave the bank a call regarding the account I had foolishly left open for him to begin saving under my supervision. Surprise, surprise. Once more, it was overdrawn. No more. I took a lunch break and closed the account. He claimed he never used the credit card, but I canceled it since he had a secondary user slot on it and had accrued $1,200 in Uber Eats and bar taps. I canceled it, paid the remaining balance myself, and severed all financial ties between us. Cutting the final rotten rope from a sinking ship was how it felt. The last component then arrived. Just before New Year's, I sent him $2,500, do you recall? Yes, my bank handled the wire transfer. I also had the receipts to show it wasn't a gift, because Sean had texted me to promise to pay it back as a loan. That afternoon, I submitted a small claims lawsuit. I didn't anticipate receiving my money back. I didn't care that Sean was having trouble making ends meet. I wanted it documented. I wanted to serve him. Like a foul stench, I wanted the paper trail to follow him everywhere. By the time the court date arrived, I pictured him attempting to explain to a judge how, despite his declaration of freedom, a few well-placed signatures were still able to bring him down. I wasn't finished yet, though. I began going through every email, every receipt, every favor, and every payment. After a long, chaotic year, I quietly and precisely chronicled everything, much like an accountant balancing a ledger. Yes, it was emotional, but it was also exhausting. On some nights, I stayed up too late, questioning whether I had gone too far. I might as well forget about it. But then I recalled how Sean had looked at me in those pictures, smiling, toasting to his freedom from me, raising a glass, and laughing with his buddies. Let go of the man who never turned out his lights. Get rid of the person who filled his tank with gas. No longer bound by the man who fought his battles for him when he was too weak or sluggish to do so yourself. I wasn't wanted by him. Okay, I was finished. When I received a very intriguing piece of mail a few days later, the final piece, the one that would truly cause everything to fall apart, fell into place. I was trying to get Sean a better deal on his insurance, therefore it was a notice concerning his coverage, which had been combined with mine. Due to non-payment, his coverage was cancelled. I was aware that Sean was unable to pay for his own insurance. I was also aware that he had most likely not even realized yet, but he would, particularly after learning that driving without insurance wasn't merely a minor in our state. He could face severe fines, license suspension, and, let's face it, a rough time if he was pulled over or involved in an accident. I felt the weight of the envelope as I sat on my couch and turned it over in my hands. There was no gloating, not even joy. Relief was felt. I was relieved that I was no longer carrying it. Sean was relieved that he would at last experience true consequences for the first time in his life. And the repercussions was going to be stunning when it did come. But I simply had to wait first. Await the subsequent call. The subsequent frantic knock on my door. The following text is a cry for assistance, and I would be prepared when the time came. It took very little time. 3 days later, just before noon, Sean's name appeared on my phone once more. I didn't respond. All I did was watch it ring. My stomach's old knot of guilt, which used to tighten, is smaller and looser now. After a minute, a text message appeared. I really need your assistance, bro. I put the phone down, this time facing up, and returned to my coffee, giving him time to process the fact that the bridge he had destroyed would not magically repair itself. Another minute went by. I'm trapped, man, please. Was stopped. No coverage. They're discussing towing once more. I promise to repay you. Hurry up. It nearly made me chuckle. Nearly. The irony was simply too flawless. He was unaware that there was no longer an automobile that could be towed. The Mustang had long since vanished. It was already up for auction 2 states away from the loan business. Regarding his license, they would be able to see the unpaid infractions he had accrued under my insurance without having to pay a thing if they were thoroughly reviewing his record. The kind of mess that takes more than a few words of apology to resolve. There was another text. Bro, please, I beseech you. What I do matters to me. It dawned on me then. The desperation had become real. Sean didn't usually cry like a crocodile. They were the ones he paraded whenever he needed cash or pity. This was raw, ugly, and real. I ought to have felt guilty. Once, perhaps. I would have a long time ago. However, I only experienced a somber sense of fulfillment. The kind that eventually becomes a weight off your chest after years of being exploited, disregarded, and thrown away. One more call. One more voicemail. He left one this time. At first I didn't open it. For a time I just sat there and gazed out the window, watching the clouds pass in thick sluggish clumps. The world was peaceful now, and I didn't feel like I was waiting for the next calamity to hit my door. Sean's voice sounded little and defeated when I eventually listened to the voicemail. "Man, please, James. I mean it. I can't drive the car," they remark. "They claim that they will tow it. I have no other people. I promise to find a way to reimburse you. Just one last time, please. I am aware that I made a mistake. I'm aware that what I said wasn't appropriate. Don't leave me like this, please. I apologize. It was there. I've been waiting for this apology for years. And it had no meaning whatsoever. As it wasn't authentic. Not because he knew what he was doing. It wasn't because he understood how much he had offended me. He needed something, that's why. Once more, always. I didn't answer. Rather, I launched the app for my bank account, the new, pristine one I had just started a few days prior, and gazed at the balance. Mine. Safe. Undisturbed. It seemed to be a little, concrete indication that I had at last prioritized myself, that I was no longer the family ATM, and that I wasn't responsible for Sean's errors. I looked over his social media later that evening just out of curiosity. Although I shouldn't have, I did. From the side of the road he was posting, an angry, blurry selfie with police lights flashing in the backdrop. Some people are only concerned when they are in need. I suppose it's better for me to have no false family. Rust betrayed, Mostumer knowledge gained. The remarks were harsh. The majority came from his party friends, who delighted to add insults but didn't know half the story. Some are sympathetic, but the most are merely joking about being arrested or getting wrecked, to start 2025 off right. Some of our common friends sent comments inquiring about his well-being. I remained silent. The post didn't appeal to me. Sean was somewhat correct, so I wasn't even tempted to. Fake family was better for him. I was too. When I woke up the following morning, the flat was peaceful. Just sunlight streaming through the blinds and the quiet, steady hum of a life that is now becoming mine again. No desperate texts, no missed calls. Feeling lighter than I had in years, I took a stroll about the neighborhood and breathed in the cool January air. Waiting for the next explosion is over. Fixing those who didn't want to be fixed is no longer an option. Sean had one more message waiting for me when I returned home. This time it wasn't furious. It wasn't an emergency. There were only 2 words. I apologize. Sean apologized, but I didn't respond. After the first time, I didn't even open the mail again. Nothing else could be said. I did not despise him. It would have been simpler to hate. To be honest, hate at least suggests that you are still concerned and that you have a keen sense of life. Distance was what I felt now. It was similar to glancing at an old photograph of a life I hardly recognized. Sean stopped talking for a few weeks. No phone calls, texts, or unexpected visits. I wasn't sure whether he had finally figured it out or whether life had just swept him away for a bit. I didn't chase him anyway. I didn't follow up. For once I paid attention to my own life. When I did, the speed at which things began to alter was almost shocking. I began returning to the gym. Just for me, not for anybody else, and not to prove anything. I made contact with old acquaintances that I had gradually lost touch with over the years. Friends who were fed up with my being treated like a doormat have quietly moved on. I even began taking on additional job shifts. I had ambitions of my own now. Things I wanted to save for, and places I wanted to see. Not because I needed the money to clean up someone else's mess. Sean's world, as I imagined it, diminished as mine expanded. I ran across an old mutual friend of ours who used to know Sean well around 2 months after that crazy New Year's Eve. We met one Saturday afternoon at a neighborhood coffee shop, and his name was Nate. In the uneasy dance of 2 individuals who have too much history in common and not enough recent connection, we engaged in the typical small talk. But Nate eventually mentioned Sean. "Have you recently spoken to your brother?" he questioned, not looking up as he stirred his coffee. "Nope," I replied plainly. Then, as if unsure of my level of interest, he looked up at me. With a shrug, I said, "He's, not doing so great, man." Nate nodded slowly and said, "Not really my problem anymore." "Yeah," I assumed. "I just wanted to let you know. He's currently living with a female and barely making ends meet. He lost his job a few weeks ago and he's reportedly already overdue on his rent." I remained silent. What could be said? Sean's path was always going in this direction. I had been in the way, fixing every pothole he stumbled into, and that was the only thing that had ever delayed it. After hesitating, Nate continued. "He's been telling everyone that you left him homeless and abandoned him." I chuckled quietly to myself. Just exhausted, not even resentful. It sounds about right. "You're not angry." "No," I told the truth. "I just finished." Saying it aloud brought a certain calm. After giving me a clumsy shoulder clap as if he wasn't sure how to handle the subject, Mate and I parted ways. Later that evening, I considered Sean's version of events, in which he fabricated the victimization to fit his own narrative. How he most likely portrayed me as the unappreciative, nasty sibling that kicked him when he was on the ground. I used to care what other people thought of me. I used to be consumed with it. No more. If the people who mattered cared enough to find out, they would know the truth, just as I did. It was a slow spring that year. Clear blue mornings that make you want to roll down the windows and drive aimlessly replaced the chilly, dreary clouds. I started simply getting in the car, choosing a direction, and driving away. About 40 minutes outside the city, I found myself on the outskirts of a little village one Saturday. Nestled between a second-hand clothing store and a bakery was a little bookshop. On a whim, I stopped by and spent 2 hours looking through old paperbacks and discussing my favorite authors with the proprietor. I purchased a handcrafted journal, a few books, and a couple of mugs. Even though it was just a Saturday spin done the way I wanted it to be, free of commitments, urgent calls, or impending danger, it felt like the greatest triumph of my life. I received a letter in the mail a few days later. Not emails or texts, but actual mail. I could tell right away that the handwriting was sloppy and hurried. I nearly tossed it away without opening it, Sean. Nearly. However, my curiosity overcame me. There was only one page of paper inside. "James, I understand that you most likely don't give a damn anymore, and I wouldn't hold it against you. I wanted to apologize for everything. I was self-centered. I exploited you. Since you were my brother and that's what brothers are meant to do, I told myself it wasn't that horrible. I now understand how much I used and hurt you. I apologize. The only person who ever made a sincere effort to assist me was you. Now that I think about it, I wrecked it. My goal is to improve. I'm not counting on you to believe me. All I wanted was for you to know. Even though I didn't deserve it, I am grateful for everything you did." I sat there for a while, Sean, flipping the letter over in my hands. It was the most sincere thing he had ever spoken to me. More truthful. And perhaps, just possibly, this time he meant it. I didn't write back though. Not out of spite, not out of rage, but out of comprehension. Not all life chapters are intended to be revisited, not because of hatred, but because rebuilding them would only result in the same circle of pain. Some bridges remain destroyed. Allowing someone back into your life is not always a sign of forgiveness. At times it simply entails sending them best wishes from afar. After carefully folding the letter and putting it in a drawer, I continued with my day. And I came to a lovely realization when summer finally arrived, bringing long evenings and bright golden light. I was no longer surviving. I was still alive, and I was just bearing my own burden, not anyone else's. Thanks for watching and diving into this wild family drama with me. If you love Reddit family drama, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one.